welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, I'm doing my top 10 hard rock and heavy metal albums from 1987. Now, of course, this is just my opinion. I went through, had a look at the list of albums that were released in 1987 and broke it down to my top 10 of my personal favorite albums of 1987 in hard rock and metal. So, let's get into it. I've got a few honorable mentions as well, but I'll do those at the end. So coming in at number 10, it's Keel and their self-titled album. Now, they probably were expecting this album to do better than it did. There was a video for Somebody's Waiting. I think that was the first single. That's a good song written by Jack Ponti. They did have, so they had some outside songwriters come in for this album. Jack Ponti also wrote the song Don't Say You Love Me, another good song. One of my favorites on it is United Nations. So that's the first track on side one. Really huge gang vocals on the chorus. In fact, this album really does feature that quite a bit. Really big background vocals, gang vocals on the choruses. And it sounds pretty good, actually. Produced by Michael Wagner. For me, this is my favorite Keel album. The other albums are pretty good, but this is my favorite one. So that's coming in at number 10. Keel, self-titled. At number 9, Y&T, Contagious. Now, this might be one of their more commercial albums, very melodic. Really, again, a little bit like Keel. They're going a little bit more for that sort of Bon Jovi kind of sound. Bon Jovi has just broken big with Slippery When Wet from 1986. And they're kind of going down that road a little bit. It's still Y&T. Fight for Your Life, that's a great song. And yeah, really solid side 2 as well. So yeah, I really like this album. Again, just like Keel, probably an album they were hoping was going to break them big, and it actually didn't happen. Yeah, Jimmy DeGrasso comes in on drums for this one, and it was released on Geffen. I think this was their first album for Geffen, and then they released one more called 10. And then that was pretty much it as far as being on Geffen and a major label was concerned. But yeah, really good album. Another band that was on Geffen that released an album in 1987 and was a lot more successful. In fact, it was huge. This is my number 8 pick. This is Whitesnake, also known as the 1987 album. So, of course, John Sykes on guitar here just is amazing. Of course, David Coverdale probably, fantastic vocals as usual. Just a record sounds just sounds fantastic. Of course, they've redone songs like Crying in the Rain and Here I Go Again, and for me, they sound so much better. I'm not saying the other versions aren't great, but for me, it's more updated sort of a sound. It sounds, I know some people might prefer the originals, but for me, I love the versions on this album. And of course, Here I Go Again, Still of the Night were massive hits. Is This Love? So there's 3 big songs there for them. Probably one of my favorite songs, though, on this album is Children of the Night. Awesome riff by John Sykes to kick that one off. Of course, Sykes was pretty much out of the band not long after this album was released. If even maybe before it was released, I'm not sure. But yeah, great album. And that is my number 8. All right, at number 7, not a fan favorite, this one, I don't think, but one of my favorite Kiss albums, and this is Crazy Nights. Well, not Crazy Nights, it's Crazy Crazy Nights. So it's, no, sorry, it is Crazy Nights. The album's called Crazy Nights, but the song is called Crazy Crazy Nights. That's right. So Crazy Nights, 1987 release. For me, this is probably one of the first Kiss albums I heard. Maybe it was the first, actually. And it's a lot of Paul Stanley on this album. Gene Simmons not really featuring so much on this, but I actually like the contributions he does make. No 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 is a good one. It took me a while to get into that, but I like it now. Good Girl Gone Bad, Thief in the Night, they're good songs. Thief in the Night was on the Wendy O. Williams album initially. Paul Stanley songs are pretty good, but the thing though too, songs like My Way and When Your Walls Come Down, they're not so great. Otherwise, I pretty much like everything else. I don't know what Paul Stanley's thinking with his. Yeah, I mean, I just don't know what was going on, what he was thinking, why he would think that was a good look, but I think he thought he was pretty hot stuff back in the day there. But yeah, there's some pretty interesting photos of Paul Stanley around this time. But anyway, no doubting his abilities as far as songwriting and vocally sounds really good on that album as well. And of course, that album they had a song "Sword in the Stone," which is on the Shocker soundtrack, but they had that ready to go for Crazy Nights, and it didn't make the album, which I find amazing because that's such a good song. I guess you could argue maybe it just wouldn't quite fit, but I mean, why you would choose My Way when you've got a song like Sword and Stone, I don't quite understand that one. All right, anyway, so that was number 7. Number 6, this is Bonfire and Fireworks. For me, this is their best album. I think for a lot of people. There's some stuff here that's a bit average. I'm not a big fan of, Give It a Try or American Nights. But, Ready for Action, Ready for Reactions, good. Sweet Obsession, which is a song actually written by Joe Lynn Turner. That's really good. Now, there's other songs too that didn't make the album or aren't on the vinyl version of this album. Angel in White and Cold Days. They're really good songs, so check those out if you haven't heard those. If you're like me and you've got the vinyl version, they're not on the album, but they're killer songs. So it's a shame they didn't put it on the vinyl version of this album. But really good album though. For me, maybe at the time, I'm just checking out this band for the first time. This is not their first album. They had an album prior to this. And they've had other albums, of course, since then, but this has always been an album I just really enjoyed back in the day. In 1987, I was like 15, going on 16, and this was something I just played a lot. And like I say, there's a couple of songs on it I didn't like so much, but on the whole, it's a really good album for me. So that is my number 6. All right, so now we must be down to the top 5, and this is where it's actually a lot of those the big hitters, the big bands. There's no sort of unknown or unusual bands on this one. These are all well-known bands and actually well-known albums that were all pretty successful albums actually. Number 5, Def Leppard and Hysteria. Now, some people don't like this album. I get that if you were into their early albums, and especially their first couple of albums. Pyromania, perhaps you can tell they're getting a little bit more commercial, but it hasn't got quite so perhaps overproduced as it's starting to get here. But I like this album. It was obviously a huge album for them. Initially, it wasn't though. It took a little while for the hits to really happen for them. The first single, at least where I lived, was Animal, and that's a good song, but it didn't really do a lot as far as being a big hit is concerned. I think it was really more Pour Some Sugar on Me that really got things going for them. Because I think in America, Woman was released as the first single, and that's actually a really good song. But again, I don't think that was a big hit for them. But if you look at side 1, it's pretty much all singles. They're all singles on side 1, you can understand why. They're good songs. I like them, which is sometimes too why I quite enjoy playing side 2 because those songs haven't been played quite so much. Yeah, it does have the song Hysteria on side 2. But otherwise, the other songs are a little less known. And there's some good songs on there. I like Don't Shoot Shotgun and Run Riot. Even Excitable's not too bad. Love and Affection I could probably do without. I like it. I like Pyromania more. And the album after this, doesn't do it for me, I'm afraid. But there we go. All right, and number 4, The Cult and Electric. So they actually recorded this album twice in some ways. I think they recorded it with a producer called, I think his name was Steve Brown, and I think in England, and then they went over to the States and got Rick Rubin to produce the album for them, re-recorded it, and basically made it a sort of a more, AC/DC sounding type album. And it's so rather than sounding like Love, which was their previous album, they wanted to go a little bit more. It's a little bit more sort of, like I said, I guess a bit more of an AC/DC sound. Both versions. I've got actually this album has both versions. So there we go. The Cult, Electric, and then Electric Peace. So it's actually this album actually has, which is cool. It's got actually both versions of the album. But I'm just going to talk about the initial version, or the version that was released in 1987. The Rick Rubin produced one, Electric. I mean, just so many good songs on this with great riffs. Wildflower, Little Devil, Love Removal Machine. Those probably are my 3 standout tracks. But yeah, it's a really solid album. Always enjoyed playing it. I haven't got sick of it at all. I could probably have done without Born to Be Wild, but otherwise, good album. So that's number 5. Number 4, one of my personal favorites. And if he released an album in this year, he was going to have to probably feature on the list. It was just a question of where he was going to go. So I've decided Dio, Dream Evil is number 4. Now, I really like this album, so you can imagine if this is coming in at number 4, there must be some good ones still to come. But great album. Initially, I was probably not liking it as much as maybe at least certainly. It's true, I don't like it as much as the first 2. But and actually, I think the way it went is I got the first 2 albums. I didn't get Sacred Heart, and then I got this one. So I still hadn't actually heard Sacred Heart at this point. But it's definitely, for me, it's better than Sacred Heart. And yeah, I've grown to enjoy it more over time. It's sort of grown on me a little bit more. Of course, Craig Goldie's come in now instead of Vivian Campbell. And, Vivian Campbell is just fantastic with on Dio. But, I think Goldie does a great job on this album. And, there are some really good songs. And like I say, it's grown on me more and more over time. All of the first side, great. All the full Sailed Away is, which is a bit of a ballad, but it's possibly the best Dio ballad. Sunset Superman's just really love that song. At first I thought the chorus was a bit repetitive, but now I actually quite like it. I like the way that chorus kicks in. Dream Evil, good. I like how they do that vocal effect on Dream Evil. I think that sounds really cool. Night People, great way to start off the album. And some real solid songs there on side 2. I think I Could Have Been a Dreamer was the first single, one of the first singles. It's a little bit more commercial, but a good song. Naked in the Rain, good way to start off side 2. Yeah, real solid album. Great album art again. So this is probably the last truly great Dio album, unfortunately. The others, there's some other good ones, but great. The first 4 are all great. All right, so that was number 4. No, sorry, that was number 3. Yeah, sorry, that was number 3. That's right, because Cult was number 4. So that was number 3 for my top 10. So now we're up to number 2. So there's 2 albums that are battling it out for the number 1 spot. It wasn't a difficult decision, although I have to say both albums are different, and I like them. I like them a lot, but they're quite different. So it's kind of hard to judge what one is better than the other. But for number 2, I went with Dokken and Back for the Attack. All the other Dokken albums are fantastic as well, but for me, prior to this album, all the other ones are really good. But for me, this is where they put it together really well. So it's a bit of a shame that this was kind of the album. After this album, they broke up. And but yeah, Kiss of Death, what a great way to kick off the album. This is a pretty heavy album. Like when I'm listening to it in 1987, I'm thinking it's a pretty heavy album. But a lot of the songs starting off with some really great riffs. So Lynch doing a great job. Don sounds really great on the vocals. It's just perfect mix of melody and heaviness. And there's not really any sort of dud tracks on this album. There's some better than others, but you know, So Many Tears and Burning Like a Flame, which the two songs that start off side two, I'm like, you know, not so much. But then the rest of the songs on side two I really like. And side one's pretty much perfect from start to finish. So just a great album. So for me, that's my number two. I wonder if you can predict or guess what my number one album is. Yes, it is Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. So I know that I don't really need to talk about this album too much. Everyone knows that album, of course, and that might be not a very interesting selection. But you know, just got to be honest and say that you know, talking about perfect albums, I think I probably said that before. It's pretty much a perfect album for me from start to finish. You know, I love every song. It just, yeah, it's original. I mean, you could argue, well, that sound sort of was lots of bands were doing that sound. I just think they do it better than anyone. And you know, it's just all the people in that band together forming good. Only those people, I think, those people all coming together could form that sound. You know, individually they're great, but put them all together, they just come up with something quite unique. And yeah, I mean, just a lot of different influences all coming together. You know, I'm not going to go over all the different influences that influenced Guns N' Roses and the different members of Guns N' Roses, but like I say, when they all came together, they really came up with that sort of Guns N' Roses sound, and for me, it's fantastic because it is also there's variation in that album, but yeah, just you know, a great album. Of course, there's a lot of there's a lot of well-known songs, quite a few singles on there, but you know the singles are good songs still. I know Sweet Child of Mine's been played a million times, but I still am quite happy to hear that. You know, if I hear that opening riff, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. And you know, Welcome to the Jungle, what a kick-ass way to kick it off. You know, I know they released an EP prior to this, but this is the introduction of the band. This is where they really introduce themselves, and yeah, it's you know, it's an album that is still popular to this day. So yeah, you know, an interesting thing too with that album is at first I was like, because I'm sort of new to this type of music, like I said, only having really got into hard rock and metal in '86. It was actually a little bit of a challenge for me at first because doesn't have the instant hooks. You've got to listen to it a little bit to kind of get into it. But yeah, once I did that, I was like, yeah, this is great stuff. And yeah, I started to like it more and more the more I listened to it. And of course, then it became, you know, Sweet Child of Mine was the big hit for them. And yeah, it got massive after that. And I liked Use Your Illusion as well, but that's quite different. They went in a different direction. You know, but a lot of those songs from Use Your Illusion had been, you know, recorded or worked on while they were working on Appetite for Destruction. Some of those songs are quite old. So yeah, it's they were obviously just in a fantastic place right there for writing and being creative and just created an amazing album. So that is my number one album from 1987. So not particularly a surprise choice there. In fact, if you go through and you have a think about my number one albums from 1985 and 1986, and now I've done 1987. No big shocks or surprises there because 1985 it was Rat, Invasion of Your Privacy, and in 1986 it was Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, another massive album, and then 87 it's Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. So I will eventually get to 1988. It'd be interesting. I don't know because I haven't looked into it, but it'd be interesting to see what album is my number one for 1988. Will it be another big seller, or will it be maybe something a little bit more obscure? We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, just before I finish up, let's just do some honourable mentions. Like I perhaps said, you know, I could have had quite a few honourable mentions because just so many great albums were released in that year, or at least very good albums. You know, a lot of albums I have in my collection, but I'm not going to spend all night going through all my albums from 1987 that I enjoy playing. But just some that I did want to mention, maybe some that you're like, oh my gosh, Steve, how is that not in your top 10? So just so that you know, well, it was considered, it just didn't quite make it in there. And, you know, there's probably on another day I'll look at these honourable mentions and go, oh no, that could easily have been Keel, or could easily have been, you know, number 9 or number 7, or maybe have slotted in there somewhere. So I'm not sure about it beating any of the albums in my top 5, but yeah, from 6 to 10 perhaps. But anyway, Sabotage and Hall of the Mountain King. I was a bit late on getting onto this, so I didn't actually hear it in 1987. Heard it a bit later on. Once I discovered the band, I think Gutter Ballet was the first Sabotage album I heard, and then had to go back and find the other ones. But it is a great album, and yeah, this is the reissue, of course, which is a great package. This album's a little bit like Kiss and the Crazy Nights album, in that it's an album by a band who are a popular band, but this is not necessarily considered one of their best albums. But for me, it possibly is my favorite album by them. It's so different. It's so different though to the other albums too. It's kind of hard necessarily to say it's better, but I really like it. And that is Love Is for Suckers. It's got lots of great songs on it. Beau Hill came in to produce this one. It's probably, I think, really meant to be a Dee Snider solo album. But I like the opening track, Wake Up the Sleeping Giant. It's more commercial, definitely. Again, maybe that Bon Jovi kind of vibe they're going for, a little bit more commercial. Couple 3 years prior to this album, they were pretty huge. They were top 10 and everything like that. So they were looking for another hit single. It ended up not happening, but there are some really good songs, I think, on this album. Warlock, Triumph and Agony. All We Are is really the song I just couldn't stop playing back in the day. Loved that song, loved the music video. But the rest of while there's no other song as good as that on the album, the rest of the songs are real solid. I'd consider this heavy metal. This is a good, solid 80s metal album. And Doro, of course, is fantastic. So, that's an honourable mention. Another honourable mention, TNT. It's probably not my favourite album. Probably the album previous to this I like more, because there's a few songs on this Child's Play. I'm not into that as far as the eye can see. No, but Everyone's a Star, fantastic. Desperate Night, Listen to Your Heart. They're good songs. But yeah, Everyone's a Star, Desperate Night. Those are my two favourites of this album. Ronnie Leticro, when he really cranks up that guitar, sounds really good. So yeah, it's a bit hit and miss, but the hits, I'm going to say hits, the songs that are good, they're really good. This was a great comeback, I think, for Alice Cooper. Kane Roberts on guitar. The last song on here, Roses on White Lace, I think is one of Alice Cooper's best songs. I really love that song. This is a lot heavier than his previous album that he did with Beau Hill. Beau Hill producing it. It's got Kane Roberts on guitar, and actually Kip Winger is coming is there on the bass as well. Ken Mary on drums. So quite a few well-known people there and playing on this album. Raise Your Fist and Yell. It wasn't the big hit, but it was sort of the start of his comeback, and then of course the next album, Trash, was huge for him. But I really like this album. The last three honorable mentions are albums I really like, but I couldn't consider them because they're not studio albums. Well, maybe actually they are, but officially they're not. So these are live albums, but I do like them. Priest live. I mean, you can't really go wrong with all these amazing songs on here. It sounds really good. And this is after on their Turbo, after their Turbo album was released, and so they're touring supporting that. And I really like Turbo, so there's a few songs from Turbo on here, but also all their other well-known songs as well. Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads tribute. It's Ozzy and of course Randy on guitar, fantastic. This is probably my favorite live album by one of my favorite bands. Like I said, these are live albums, but I'm not sure about this album being live. But it doesn't matter. It's just I love playing this album. This is Wasp live in the Raw. Has a couple of songs that had not been on previous albums, Harder, Faster, and The Manimal. Yeah, supposedly it's live, and of course there's a studio track, Scream Until You Like It. Yeah, great stuff. But again, it wouldn't qualify. I'm not going to qualify it for the top 10 because it's not a studio album. All right, hey, thanks for watching. I'd be interested to know. Doesn't have to be your top 10, maybe your top 5, or what's your top 3 or your top album from 1987. Are there any of my top 10 that would be in yours, or maybe you've got some different opinions? Don't forget, if you like this kind of content, love to see more people subscribing. It's fantastic to see I'm well over 200 subscribers now, which is really good. And the comments are fantastic too. Got lots of people, leaving regular comments, which is really nice. So yeah, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll be back later sometime very soon with another video. All right, we'll catch you later.